I really like this question, so let's get into it. Why did I believe Stand With Meg for so long? What was it about our relationship? Or what did she say or do that made it easy for me to believe that Craig was the villain and that she was innocent and being abused? And then, like, how would I flip that later? Like, what went into that? So I have lots of theories about it. Naturally, let's get into it. So the first thing Megan relied on is what I call, and I'm sure there's a more technical term for it, it's the narc orbit. So a narc orbit is a narcissist's orbit. It's a way that a narcissist sets up their friends and family and community to allow them to get what they need from people without accountability, without people fact checking, without that like usual responsibility that comes with the community. So it's all the benefits, none of the accountability. So before I draw the narc orbit, let me show you what like a usual healthy orbit looks like. So an orbit I would create later in life when I got healthy would look something like this. I would, of course, be at the center of my own universe. That's very normal and healthy. But right outside that, I would have people that I allow closest to me. So this is going to be like my sister Beth right here, my husband, my kids, and all of these people, including my friends, maybe even a few coworkers here and there. These are all people that I feel should have like the closest access to me. And all of these people also have access to each other. So I'm frequently bringing my friends together with my family. Like that's a very normal, healthy thing. Like my kids know my friends, my kids know my sisters and my brothers. Like they know each other. And they all have access to varying levels of me. And then outside of that, I have people who I still care about, but maybe don't have as much access to me. So that's going to be neighbors or people in the community that I haven't really connected with, but like we work together well. Like these people can still connect, but they have less access to me. But you'll notice like everyone can kind of like move around pretty freely in this like very healthy dynamic. Now, with a narc orbit, the foundation of this is not how do I connect to give people access to me, it's how do I maintain control over the performance I'm giving to each individual person. Because the strongest way a narcissist is able to control you is knowing your desires and then manipulating you specifically, and that works best on a one-on-one basis. Or it can work really well for like co-leaders on like a one to like thousands basis, but for right now, we'll stick to one-on-one. That's a story for another day. The center of Megan's orbit is Megan, and she creates performances that she gives to other people. So she performs on social media a very specific version of herself. She would perform with Craig this like stay-at-home mom, trad wife energy. Like, I want to have lots of kids. Like, that was her thing. That's what she told Craig. That's what she sold Craig on. And then there's me, and she would perform this like ambitious career woman thing because that's what she knew I wanted. She would perform differently for Beth, showing lots of love and affection and being quite cozy with her, as cozy as Megan could be. And then it wasn't like Megan would orbit off friends and family separately. It's even within those subsects, those people also didn't. She also performed differently for each one of those. So let's use friend named Laura, who they were very close up until recently. And then she would have like our mother, and then we'll put my dad. And so she would perform differently for all of these people. And the only way this works is if these people never touch. And by touch, I mean hang out. So it worked well. So she would make sure if like me, Beth, and Megan were all together, that was difficult for her to kind of control who she was. If me and Craig were to stay together to hang out with her, that would also be difficult for her. So the way a narcissist keeps people from touching in this orbit is she then begins triangulating. So she makes little triangles that make it impossible for me to move close to Craig. The way she does this is by telling stories and sowing discord. So, for example, I would nanny for Megan and Craig for a week in Disney World, and at the end of the week, Craig would try to tip me $100. And I remember being like, wow, that is so kind and generous. And Megan would take it away and say, no, 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 she doesn't need that. She didn't do that good of a job. And so I'm immediately like, Megan's the bad guy. Craig is the generous person. So then later she pulled me aside and said, Craig made me do that. He wanted to perform for you. It's a crazy story. I bought it because she's this ambitious career woman, and she had told me things about him, that he was really greedy and like a money hoarder. And so the narrative worked. But she would do this over and over again. Anytime Craig would try to show me who he was, she would undermine it and try to undercut it. And she'd come to me and say, Craig doesn't like you very much. He doesn't think you're very good at this. Or Craig thinks this about you. And then she would go, I'm assuming, tell Craig things about me. Like, Craig, she did this and she's not that good at this. And so Craig and I would keep space from each other because we just kind of didn't get along, or at least we perceived to not get along. I don't know. It was very infrequently that Megan would bring us together. She tried to keep us apart. She would do the same thing with like our dad and Craig. She told Craig that my dad borrowed money from her when she was in her teens. My dad's never borrowed money from anyone. He probably should have at some point. She would tell Laura, for example, she would tell Laura that she had no help with the kids and that Laura needed to take her kids for the weekend. And then she would also tell Beth that she had no help and she needed Beth to take the kids for the weekend. And so, with that, Laura resented Beth because she thought Beth wasn't helpful. Beth resented Laura, I think. My guess is Laura's not being helpful. And so, therefore, every weekend, Megan had someone else taking her kids because these people were at odds. This is kind of a broad example, but this is how it works with triangulation. It keeps people from touching so she can maintain the performance of who she is for each person. This also required, she would kind of, for social media, she kind of performs poverty. She says things like, I'm so broke, I couldn't go buy the tolls or whatever, which is diametrically opposed to the other thing that she's trying to show is that she's like the successful person you should pay money to. And it's really like some people aren't catching it, but a lot of people are, that she's trying to perform two different things. And it worked well in this. She could perform poverty for Beth and use coupons. And then when she was around Laura, she could say things like, oh, I have this cool makeup and I'm a very impressive friend. So this is the narc orbit. All right, the next thing Megan would rely on in order to kind of continue her grift was broken people. And that says a lot about me. It says a lot about Craig. It says a lot about the people that follow her on social media. She relies on people who have been treated really, really poorly in order to buy into her story. Because I was raised in a house where Megan was the squeaky wheel who always got the grease. Like that was her thing. Like if Megan did something, it was just Megan being Megan. My husband even says, like I asked him last night, hey, why do you think it is that I believed Megan's nonsense for so long? And he was like, you would just make an excuse. Oh, it's just Megan being Megan. It's just Megan being Megan. So who was Megan being Megan in our house? Megan would always ask for more, to the point that it made people really uncomfortable, or it turned people into like welcome mats. She, at one point when they were children, did in fact ask Beth to give her Christmas presents, and Beth did it. And the only reason Megan didn't get away with it is my dad caught her and was like, what are you doing? And she was like, I'm giving Megan my Christmas presents. Megan gave me a really compelling story. Megan will always ask for more. She did it to me. She would do it to anybody. But because I was raised in a home where that was encouraged and allowed, like if Megan would over ask for something, my mom didn't want to deal with her. So she would just be like, just give Megan what she wants. Just because Megan was loud and she was that squeaky wheel. So I was raised to believe that when someone asks for more, you give it to them, which made me very fertile ground for her to continue to use. But this asking for more only works if you have something to offer to people. So Megan would often offer things and then never deliver on them. So Megan would promise she'd do things and then would just never do them. And if you were to go, Mom, me and Megan made a deal and she didn't do it, Mom will be like, it's just Megan being Megan. Like everybody in my family enabled Megan throughout our lives. Like even Jamie, sorry, Jamie, but at one point Jamie said, I think it was a tiger can't change its stripes. Like there was very much this idea that like Megan was always going to be Megan. There was nothing you could do about it. You could either get on board or you just had to stay away. And because we wanted to maintain a very close family, we all just kind of enabled her. And I've touched on this before, but my mom did this with me and my dad. Like she made sure that I believed that my dad was a terrible person. And this is something I kind of think of like breadcrumbing. Megan and my mom both do this. They're really, really careful about the stories that they tell, even before they need to like cash in. So even before Megan and Craig got married, Megan started planting seeds of stories that like Craig wasn't that good of a guy. And I remember even telling her, because I was like 16, like, hey, Megan, if he's not this good of a guy, why are you marrying him? But a lot of people are just like, oh, okay. And they just kind of take those stories in, don't question it, take those stories in. So later, when she can say, 6 years later, when she'd never said anything about Craig abusing her, when she said, Craig abused me, we were all like, okay, sure. All we've heard is shitty stories up until now. So that checks out. She would also breadcrumb about how poor she was. She would just be like, oh, I don't have the money for that. She does it on social, again, like I said, where she said she can't pay the tolls, but then she also bought a house. That doesn't make sense, but she plants these little stories. The next thing is the friend. Megan's friend. Could be anybody. She often uses a friend to get out of anything. So she's been playing poverty. She's been saying, I'm so poor, I don't have any money, when she was getting $6,000 a month in child support and alimony. And whenever she would get something nice and new or travel, we would say, where did this money come from? How did you do this? We thought you were poor. You told us last week that your kids were on assisted lunch programs, and now you've got this like brand new computer. It was always a friend bought it for me, or a friend gave it to me, or I bartered for it. She was constantly doing that. And by doing so, it created so much confusion on like where things were flowing. And it was always an unnamed friend, so that you couldn't really so you couldn't really corroborate if like this friend was really wealthy or like where this friend was. So all of that confusion really landed with us just being like, I don't know, Megan somehow comes up with things when she needs it. This would result in me later, when like everyone was really worried about her, I was like, you guys, She figured out how to get Botox off the internet and injected herself. She's capable. We need to stop worrying about her. Like, if Megan wants something, she'll find a way to get it. That's why when she's like, I can't see my kids, I'm like, if you really wanted to see your kids, you'd figure it out. You figured out how to start a podcast. You figured out how to do all of this like court stuff. You learned law, and yet you can't figure out how to see your kids. That's crazy. But this mysterious friend haunts us to this day. We still don't, we're always like, hey, do you know who this friend was that did this? And this friend that did this? Or, but it was always just a friend. We never knew. All right, the other way Megan kind of kept us under her spell was with love bombing and like gift dangling. I don't know how else to describe it. I don't like that word, dangling. But Megan would learn what you liked. She would ask you questions. She would get to the bottom of what you were about and something you really wanted. And she'd figure out how to make herself the person that would help you get it. So right now on social media, she is saying that you'll get your kids back with her. Not that you'll get your kids back, but you'll get your kids back with her. She's dangling something in front of all of these kids, these people on social media that they really want, which is their kids. She would do this to everybody in her life all the time. So when I would babysit for her constantly, and I would ask like, could you pay me, or could you cover the cost of gas the 2.5 hours it took to get here to watch your kids? She would say, no, but when you have kids, I'll help you so much. It'll be amazing. And she always dangled that in front of me. Like, one day I'm going to help you with your kids. And I knew my mom wasn't going to be helpful, and I knew I wanted kids. Fun fact, Megan was very much in my life when I had my first, never watched my kids. Not once. Not once did she watch my kids. She even told me, this is heartbreaking, and I was planning it. She told me that after I had my first kid, she was going to come stay with me for a week. And I told my husband, I said, great news. Megan's going to come stay with us for a week and take care of the baby so we can get sleep. That never happened. Because she even had time off. Like, the kids were at their dad's for like a week or so. She could have come and done that, and she didn't. That one really broke my heart. That one pissed my husband off a bunch because we were kind of counting on that. So we never had any of that like overnight help when we were new parents. For someone else, she would actually dangle an entire house. But I just did that for my friend. I'm redoing her house. Her and her kids come up here. I took this closet out. Oh. So in 2024, she would make a TikTok saying, I am remodeling a house for a single mother who's going to live there. This single woman was Alana. Megan now claims that house she bought for herself with the intention of remodeling it for herself. And that's because at one point she did tell Alana, I'm going to let you stay in my house. It's almost too good to be true, right? And it was. And then she pulled that rug out from underneath Alana, and she does this to people all the time.
Then she offered for me and my kids to come live at her house, at the new one, when it was ready. And we made all these plans.
She'll give them this big promise, like, I'm going to do this big thing and have a big announcement. And then she would just never deliver on it. In fact, when she was 16 and I was, I don't know, however old I was, little, she would ask me to help her clean her room because she's a very messy person. And I was very good at cleaning, still am. And she would be like, will you help me clean my room? I will take you to Dairy Queen and get an ice cream. And I was like, hell yeah, cha-ching. So I'd help her clean her room. And then I was like, okay, let's go get ice cream. And she said, I already took you to get ice cream. And I was like, no, you didn't. And she's like, yeah, we already went. And I was like, no, we didn't. And I have like an ironclad memory. And I was like, no, we didn't. And when I went to my mom, she was like, I don't have time for this. And so I was just like, SOL. Apparently, I would go on and do this to my little brother. I don't remember this. I think I blacked it out. But I was telling the story, and he was like, yeah, no, you did that to me later. And I was like, so I apologized. I was like, I was mortified. I was like, I will take you to Dairy Queen right now. Apparently, I would go on to repeat the trauma. Not a cycle breaker here. But anyway, that like cruelty of like promising something to somebody and then like gaslighting them out of it goes way back. She would even do this with one of her child number one. She would tell child number one that if she would come back live with her, she would get her a dog. She would often use pets as like this dangle, like this thing somebody really wanted, and then she would get them a pet. And then if they started behaving poorly, like the child started behaving poorly, the pets would be gone. I'll let you figure out what I mean by that. I don't have a section for this, but the last thing I'll kind of say about it is I also was raised to believe that moms don't do a whole lot to love on their children. That's other people's jobs. So when Megan was kind of shitty to the kids, I was kind of like, sure, moms are kind of shitty to kids. I didn't know. And I think what a big shift happened in our family was when Megan's younger siblings started having kids, and we were like, that's not how that should work. And like, yes, kids are hard, but you shouldn't really speak to kids that way. And I started seeing how the kids are behaving from a healed perspective. not 12-year-old SJ who like believed that it was normal for parents to leave their kids at home for like 8 hours at a time, to adult SJ who was like, oh no, I would literally never do this to my kids. And like, I may need a break from my kids, but I'd never tell them that. Like, there's all these things that kind of became clear, but it relied on us believing that our mom was a good mom so that we could believe Megan was a good mom. So once we all started unpacking, ooh, our mom lied to us about our dad and she was not a very good mom, it was much easier to understand, oh, Megan's doing the same thing. And so it wasn't until we were healed from that that we could really see this. So if you're dealing with somebody who you're like, why are they still believing this narcissist? How are they believing these crazy tales? There's something in their either their family line or a relationship near to them that they need to be true. Like, I needed it to be true that my mother was a good mother. Otherwise, I had to face the fact that I'd wrongfully hated my dad my whole life. Once I faced that, things got much easier. But if somebody is refusing to believe the truth, so when I have people in my comments who are like, Megan's a good person, they need to believe Megan's a good person so that they can believe they're a good person. So if they take any amount of truth in and allow it to change their mindset, it will break something like a load-bearing coping skill that's keeping their sanity together. And so they will defend it tooth and nail. And that would have been me. I was defending that tooth and nail. So I have so much grace and compassion for people as they unhook from that, as they're like, actually, wait, Megan likely abused her kids, so maybe I wasn't super great to my kids. And that's a hard pill to swallow. You can come back from it. You can always come back from not being great to your kids. But when you reach a certain point, you can't anymore. So that is how I believed Stand With Meg for so long. Hope that helped.